Okay, so Nima, we know that with the RIA policy, the price of EB-5 now is $800,000. It's a 60% increase or so from the previous $500,000 or more. Today, it's harder to get $800,000 together. A lot of people are talking about partial capital contributions or installments. Kind of take us through what it is and how it works, and then how to get it approved.
The EB-5 regulations do not require you to be fully invested when you file your I-526 EB-5 application. Rather, they require you to be fully invested by the time they review your application. If an officer reviews your application and sees that you are not fully invested, you will receive what's called a request for evidence or a notice of intent to deny, asking you for additional financial information to prove that you did indeed make the full $800,000 investment. So we've been filing these partial applications primarily with Bearing since 2016. And for every investor that did indeed move forward and make the full investment, we have a 100% approval record. What an attorney needs to accomplish in this initial partial investment EB-5 filing is two things. One is you need to evidence intent to fund, and then the second is ability to fund. So we believe between the investment contracts that you're signing as part of the project, the offering documents, the subscription document, the escrow, the partnership agreements, and then an additional side letter that describes what your initial investment is, when the balance in the investment will be, and identifying the source of funds that balance of the investment will come from, satisfies the intent to fund. So the second hurdle is ability to fund. So what can we show to USCIS that you actually really do have the capital or will have the capital in the near future to move forward with the investment? If your source of funds is, hey, I have this amazing house, it's gone up in value significantly since I bought it, I will be able to sell it, or I will be able to do cash out refinance or a HELOC to get the balance of the investment. Well, we would ask you for income documents that evidence how you purchased the home. We would ask you for the deed of the home. We would ask you for appraisal, and then maybe a letter from the bank that says you're discussing a HELOC, maybe the listing agreement with a broker to evidence that you're actually on the market. And then that would be enough for us to file your application. We'll get the receipt notice in about 2 weeks. And then when you're ready to make the balance of the investment, we would simply supplement that EB-5 filing with the additional financial documents.
Not every attorney is experienced with this partial payment approach. Sometimes investors will ask me, well, will USCIS accept my supplemental source of funds report or interfiling 6 months later, 12 months later? Have you had any challenges from USCIS in that regard?
No, absolutely no challenges from USCIS. I mean, this was written into the old EB-5 regulations. It's written now very clearly into the RIA. I think the reason that partial is not as popular or not as well known by investors and attorneys is simply because not all projects accept partial investments. Some projects are in a more immediate need of the $800,000 investment, so they're not willing to provide you a timeline. I speak to investors now and I speak to attorneys, and they say, well, I heard that I could do partial, that I could do $250,000 investment, and then I have 6 months. And I say, well, yeah, absolutely, you could do that, but that's also very specific to the project, very specific to 1900 Broadway. What the initial investment is and what the timeline to fund is, that's actually a business negotiation between you and the project, not necessarily USCIS regulation.
Let's talk about that piece though. How long do I have to fund my $800,000? There's an investment line and an immigration line.
Right.
Let's explain both.
We're playing a little bit of a game on these partial investments of when will your application be reviewed. Ideally, you do not want to receive a request for evidence for USCIS because a request for evidence could delay the processing of your application, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. Nobody wants to spend $800,000 and then experience any delays. Based on current processing times, we would estimate somewhere between 18 months and 2 years for an application to be approved. That may mean that it would be, say, 14 months, maybe 16 months before an adjudicator even looks at your petition. So I think it would be fair to say that you would have up to 12 months to make the investment, but that's from an immigration perspective. What will really drive this is the conversation with the project. How long is the project willing to give you to make the balance of the investment? And as I said before, some projects may say, no, we won't let you file through us unless you make the full 800,000. Someone like Baring may say, okay, well, we're happy to give you 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. That's the negotiation. That is your investment timeline. And then you would have a specific agreement with the project with respect to that investment timeline detailing the terms, right? It wouldn't just be an oral conversation, you guys shake hands. You would have this in writing, so nothing changes for you, nothing changes for them. And then, as I said earlier, that would be one of the pivotal pieces of evidence to evidence your intent to actually fund your EB-5 application.
Thank you for those answers.
I would just want to follow up a little bit about the source of funds,
Sure.
Identifying the future source of funds, because some investors kind of misunderstand that this is not like a mere contingency plan. It's
Right.
not a mere
Right.
deposit, and maybe I'll do EB-5 as a backup, so I'll just kind of start the process while I look at another option. So you do have to, as you said, show that intent to invest and that commitment. How solidified should those future sources be? You described how the investor needs to identify those sources when you're filing. Can they change later? Life happens, right? Over
Yeah.
6 months, 12 months, they can't sell the house. Can they go get a loan?
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, that's absolutely a great question. When you have a filed application and then you change something in that application, that is called a material change. The only time that you are allowed to have a material change during EB-5 processing, the 526 processing, is actually your source of funds. So if we were to submit an application that says you are going to sell your home, but since we filed the application, maybe the equities, your brokerage account increased, maybe you won the lottery, hopefully, and you were to change the source, that's absolutely fine from a USCIS perspective. We would just provide those new source documents as a supplemental filing. I think in general, what we would like to do when we file the initial application is not to lock you in. We would like to leave it pretty general. So for individuals that have an opportunity to either refinance their home or sell some equities, or maybe they have some other assets, I think we would provide a general broad scope of all the assets that you actually have, and that you will make the determinations based on current market value, interest rates, when the balance of the investment is due. We wouldn't even necessarily want to trigger the material change, but you do have that to rely on. If all of those sources are out the window and now you're receiving a gift from a friend or a family member, absolutely available to you, absolutely will be approved.
What is a material change by itself, just period?
What is a material change for USCIS purposes? When we file an EB-5 application, which is called the I-526E, it is a combination of two sets of documents. One is your personal documents, your civil documents, passports, marriage certificates, birth certificates, and then your financial history that shows how you were able to earn and accumulate the 800,000. The other set of documents are the project documents, where the project is detailing how they are going to create the jobs based on your investment, as well as other investments in the project. When we file these applications, it is a snapshot at a place in time. And USCIS says, well, for us to be able to approve this application, that snapshot on that day and time, you cannot change anything. If you were to change anything other than the source of funds, that application is now moot, it is no longer valid, and you would need to withdraw and refile. So what constitutes a material change? USCIS has never actually defined material change. They refer to the SEC definition, which is loosely a change that would make you reconsider your investment. So an example that we would give is if you are investing in a hotel, and then somewhere along the line, the project says, it doesn't make sense to be a hotel anymore, we're going to be an amusement park. Well, that's a material change. It's pretty significant. You've completely changed the direction of the project, and USCIS would determine that your I-526 would need to be withdrawn and refiled with new project documents evidencing how the amusement park would create jobs. Where a material change does not affect your application, two instances only. One is source of funds, when you have a partial investment and you are making the balance of the investment. The second opportunity is once your application has been approved and your green card has been issued. If you are in the United States with a green card and the project has now gone through some sort of material change, your green card will still be maintained. When you file your 829 application, the requirement would be to provide all the new project details to evidence how the project changes will still create the jobs.
If you've entered the United States after the I-526 is approved, the adjustment of status, you have a conditional green card, you enter the United States, and you have a material change, does essentially the 829 also turn into a new 526 and 829 process altogether?
Yes and no. It would be what we would call a de novo review. It would be no deference is being provided to the previous project that you received your 526 approval on. It would be a new review based on the 829. But once you're in the United States with a green card, you have all the rights of a U.S. citizen. So if USCIS determines that the 829 has not created sufficient jobs, or it falls out of the parameters of the EB-5 program, certainly they can deny your 829, but USCIS does not have the ability to take your green card away. Only a judge could do that. If you were to find yourself in a position like that, you would not necessarily be too afraid if the 829 is denied, because you would maintain your green card, you would be put in proceedings to see a judge and plead your case in front of a judge. And a judge is always going to be more compassionate and sympathetic to the plight of you as an investor than USCIS is going to be.